A disastrous introduction. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of Cadence Music, the small instrument shop nestled between a coffee shop and a bookstore in downtown Portland. Olivia Jenkins wiped down the glass display case housing vintage guitar picks while humming a melody she'd composed the night before. At 28, she'd imagined her music career would be further along by now. Not working retail and playing occasional gigs at half-empty coffee shops. Miss Jenkins, her manager Raymond appeared from the back room with uncharacteristic excitement in his voice. We have a special client coming in today to look at the '64 Stratocaster. Mr. Harrison's assistant just called to confirm. Olivia's heart skipped. Everyone in the music industry knew James Harrison, the reclusive producer behind some of the biggest albums of the past decade. Rumors about his temperamental nature and perfectionism were legendary. Why is he coming himself? Doesn't he usually send people to acquire instruments? She asked, suddenly conscious of her worn jeans and the coffee stain on her sleeve. Raymond shrugged. Apparently this one's personal. Just, be professional. Okay, no fangirling. I've never fangirled in my life, Olivia protested. Though she'd listened to Harrison's production work obsessively, studying the layered textures and innovative arrangements that had revolutionized modern sound, the bell above the door chimed. Precisely at 2 o'clock. The man who entered seemed smaller in person, mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair and understated clothes that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly rent. His eyes, however, were exactly as described in rare interviews, piercing and observant, missing nothing. Mr. Harrison, Raymond rushed forward, hand extended. Such an honor to have you in our humble shop. James Harrison's handshake was brief but polite. The Stratocaster, please. I have another appointment at 3. Olivia retrieved the guitar case from the climate-controlled room, her hands steady despite her nerves. This instrument was special, a 1964 Fender Stratocaster in Fiesta Red, previously owned by a blues legend. The $75,000 price tag made it the most valuable piece in the store. As she carefully placed the case on the viewing table, Harrison's phone rang. He stepped away to take the call, his voice low but animated about some production issue. Olivia opened the case, revealing the guitar's pristine condition. The instrument seemed to glow under the shop lights, its finish unmarred by time. She lifted it gently to position it better for viewing when Harrison returned. That's when disaster struck. The rain-slick floor, her worn sneakers, and a moment's distraction created the perfect storm. Olivia's foot slipped. As she stumbled, her grip on the vintage Stratocaster faltered. The instrument seemed to move in slow motion as it slipped from her hands, hit the edge of the table, and crashed to the floor with a sickening crack. The sound that emerged, a discordant, splintering noise, might as well have been a gunshot. Raymond's face drained of color. The store went deathly quiet. Olivia dropped to her knees beside the fallen instrument, hands shaking. The beautiful red finish was gouged deeply, and worse, a hairline crack ran from the neck joint into the body. I'm so sorry, she whispered, horror washing over her in waves. I don't know what happened. James Harrison ended his call and turned around, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the scene. Olivia braced herself for the explosion, for threats of lawsuits and career-ending recriminations. Instead, he knelt down beside her, examining the damage with clinical interest. Interesting, he said quietly. The crack follows the grain pattern exactly. Olivia blinked, tears threatening. Mr. Harrison, I'll pay for this somehow. I'll work it off. I know it's irreplaceable, but it's a guitar, he interrupted, his voice unexpectedly gentle. A beautiful one, certainly, but still just wood and wire. Raymond stepped forward, profuse apologies tumbling out. Mr. Harrison, please accept our deepest. Harrison raised a hand, silencing him. Does she play? He asked, nodding toward Olivia. Yes, Olivia admitted, confusion momentarily replacing her shame. I write my own music. Something shifted in Harrison's expression, a flicker of genuine interest. Good, because instruments are meant to be played, not enshrined. The world has enough perfect, untouched things. He stood, brushing invisible dust from his knees. I'll still purchase it. Raymond stammered in disbelief. But sir, the damage just means it has a story now, Harrison replied. Adjust the price accordingly, but I want it. And, he added, glancing at Olivia, I'd like her to deliver it to my studio after your repair person addresses the structural issues. As he handed his card to a bewildered Raymond, Harrison looked back at Olivia, still kneeling beside the fallen Stratocaster. Sometimes our worst mistakes lead to our greatest opportunities, Ms. Jenkins. The question is whether we're brave enough to walk through the doors they open. With that enigmatic statement, he was gone, leaving behind a stunned silence and the faint scent of expensive cologne. Olivia remained frozen, the broken guitar beside her, wondering if she'd just destroyed her career or stumbled into something impossible to predict. Harmonious opportunity. 3 weeks passed before the vintage Stratocaster was ready. Olivia had replayed the incident in her mind countless times, still unable to believe that James Harrison had not only forgiven the accident but insisted on purchasing the damaged instrument. Raymond had been equally baffled, though considerably relieved, when Harrison's business manager transferred payment only a 15% reduction from the original price. "You're delivering it today?" Beatrice, Olivia's roommate and fellow musician, asked as she watched Olivia fret over her outfit for the 5th time that morning. "I'm just dropping off a guitar," Olivia replied, settling on dark jeans and a simple blouse. "It's not an audition." Beatrice smirked. "Then why have you been practicing your original compositions all week?" Olivia ignored the question. She had indeed been rehearsing obsessively, though she couldn't articulate why. Something about Harrison's parting words had kindled a fragile hope she was afraid to acknowledge. Harrison Studios occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the industrial district. The receptionist, a woman with striking silver hair and a nonsense demeanor, eyed Olivia skeptically when she arrived with a guitar case. "Mr. Harrison is finishing a session," she said, checking her tablet. "You can wait." The waiting area showcased platinum records and industry awards behind glass cases, through soundproofed windows. Olivia glimpsed state-of-the-art recording equipment and musicians moving about in the main studio. She clutched a repaired Stratocaster, feeling impossibly out of place. 40 minutes later, the studio door opened, and a well-known indie rock band filed out, engaged in animated conversation. James Harrison followed, looking tired but satisfied. When he spotted Olivia, recognition flickered across his features. "Guitar girl," he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. "You came—" "Olivia Jenkins," she corrected, standing straighter. "And yes, I brought you The repair specialist did remarkable work. The crack is barely visible." Harrison gestured toward a smaller studio. "Let's have a look." The room was intimate, a writing space rather than a full recording studio, with acoustic treatments and a stunning view of the river. Olivia carefully opened the case, revealing the restored guitar. The damage was indeed nearly imperceptible unless you knew exactly where to look. Harrison examined it with meticulous attention, running his fingers along the repaired area. "Beautiful work," he murmured, then unexpectedly held the instrument out to her. "Play something on it." Olivia froze. "I couldn't possibly. Instruments need to be played," he insisted. "Besides, I'm curious." Her hands trembled slightly as she took the Stratocaster, its weight familiar yet intimidating given its value and history. She perched on a nearby stool, adjusted the tuning, and after a deep breath, began to play. She chose one of her original compositions, a haunting melody that shifted between minor and major tonalities, telling a wordless story of longing and resilience. She closed her eyes, forgetting momentarily where she was and who was listening. The guitar responded beautifully, its vintage tone warm and complex. When she finished, the silence felt charged. Harrison was watching her with an inscrutable expression. "You never mentioned you were that good," he said finally. Heat crept into her cheeks. "You never asked." Something approximating a smile touched his lips. "Fair enough." He took the guitar and placed it carefully on a stand rather than returning it to its case. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Jenkins." Olivia's heart raced. "I'm listening." "I'm hosting a small industry gathering here next weekend. Nothing extravagant, 20 people, mostly colleagues and potential clients. I need background music that won't sound like an elevator soundtrack." He paused, studying her reaction. 3 hours, your original compositions. I'll pay standard professional rates." Olivia blinked, certain she'd misheard. "You want me to perform for your industry colleagues? Is that a problem?" His tone was neutral, impossible to read. "No, it's just unexpected." She hesitated. "Why me? You know literally every musician in Portland." Harrison moved to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. "The music industry is full of perfect, polished performers. What it lacks is authenticity, people who play because they have something to say, not because they are trying to impress someone." He turned back to her. "If you play like someone who needs the music, not someone who needs the audience." The observation struck uncomfortably close to home. Olivia had always struggled with performing, preferring the private sanctuary of composition. "I'll need the details," she said, surprised by her own confidence. "And I have conditions." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Conditions? I choose my own material. I bring my own guitar. And this is a professional engagement, not charity because you feel sorry for me about the accident." Harrison actually laughed, a short, genuine sound that transformed his serious face. "Agreed on all counts. Jennifer at the front desk will handle the paperwork." He extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Jenkins." As she shook his hand, Olivia noticed calluses that matched her own, the mark of someone who still played regularly despite his producer status. "One last thing," Harrison added as he walked her to the door. "I've been working on a film score that's missing something in the third movement. After your set, I'd appreciate your thoughts." Olivia paused, startled. "My thoughts? On your work?" "Sometimes we get too close to our own creations." His expression was fresh ears can hear what we've become deaf to. The week that followed was a blur of preparation. Olivia gave notice at the music store, arranged her set list, and battled waves of imposter syndrome that threatened to drown her resolve. Beatrice helped her select a performance outfit that struck the balance between professional and authentic. Dress in deep blue with comfortable boots that wouldn't leave her feet aching after 3 hours. The night of the gathering, Olivia arrived early to set up in the corner of Harrison's expansive studio lounge. The space had been transformed with subtle lighting and catering stations, exuding casual elegance. Nervous, Harrison appeared beside her as she tuned her guitar, a vintage Telecaster she'd saved for years to purchase. Terrified, she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. He nodded approvingly. Good nervousness means you care about doing it right. As guests began to arrive, renowned producers, label executives, and a few celebrated musicians, Olivia forced herself to focus on her music rather than the intimidating crowd. She began with her more accessible compositions, warming up both her fingers and her courage. An hour into her performance, she noticed something unexpected. People were actually listening, not just tolerating the background music, but pausing their conversations to watch her play. A Grammy-winning songwriter asked for her name. A label executive took a video of a particularly complex passage. During her break, Harrison brought her water and introduced her to several key industry figures. As a composer you'll be hearing much more from. The casual endorsement from someone of his stature caused a ripple of interest. Later, as promised, Harrison showed her into his personal studio and played the film score he'd mentioned, a haunting, atmospheric piece for a psychological thriller. Olivia listened intently, and when he asked for her thoughts, she spoke honestly about the third movement's emotional arc. It pulls back just when it should be building tension, she said, forgetting to be intimidated. The strings are creating distance when you want the audience to feel trapped. Instead of dismissing her observation, Harrison considered it thoughtfully, then made adjustments to the arrangement, inverting several chord progressions. The difference was subtle but powerful. Better, he acknowledged, offering no further explanation but making detailed notes on the score. As Olivia prepared to leave that night, exhausted but exhilarated, Harrison handed her an envelope. Your payment, plus a bonus. He hesitated, then added, I'm producing an album for Westbrook next month. Their guitarist broke his hand rock climbing. They'll need a session musician for 3 tracks. Olivia stared at him, processing the implications. Westbrook was an emerging band with significant critical acclaim. Session work for them would be a substantial credit. Are you offering me the job? She asked carefully. I'm offering you an audition, Harrison corrected. Next Wednesday, 2 o'clock. They're particular about their sound, but I think your style would complement them. Outside in the cool night air, Olivia opened the envelope to find payments significantly above the standard professional rates he'd initially mentioned. Beneath the check was a business card with Harrison's personal number handwritten on the back. Her phone buzzed with a text from Beatrice. How was playing for the music industry elite? Olivia smiled, looking back at the illuminated studio windows. Interesting, she typed back. I think I just found a door I didn't know existed. Asterisk's crescendo of complications. The Westbrook audition changed everything. Olivia arrived with modest expectations and left with a contract for not just 3 tracks, but as a featured guitarist on their entire album. James had observed from the control room, offering minimal input, but nodding approvingly when she suggested a modified bridge section that transformed their lead single. By mid-December, Olivia found herself immersed in Portland's music scene in ways she'd only dreamed of previously. Session work came steadily. Musicians who'd heard her playing on Westbrook's advanced tracks sought her distinctive sound. She'd given up her apartment with Beatrice, renting a small studio with enough space for a modest recording setup purchased with her new income. James remained an enigmatic presence in her professional eccentric, amending her for projects, occasionally inviting her to contribute to sessions at his studio, but maintaining a careful professional distance. Their dynamic existed somewhere between mentorship and collaboration, neither fully defined nor easily dismissed. He's obviously grooming you as his protege, remarked Thomas Westbrook after a particularly grueling recording session where James had pushed Olivia through 17 takes of a solo. It's not like that, Olivia insisted, though she wasn't entirely sure what it was. He's just ... notoriously selective about who he works with, Thomas finished. Trust me, Harrison doesn't waste time on musicians unless he sees something exceptional. This conversation replayed in Olivia's mind as she entered Meridian, an upscale restaurant where James had asked her to meet him to discuss a potential project. The motard led her to a private corner table where James was reviewing something on his tablet. Sorry I'm late, she said, slightly breathless from rushing. The session ran long. James looked up, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. The Alvarez project, how's it coming? Challenging. Eduardo wants something between flamenco and progressive rock, which is like asking for fire that doesn't burn. The corner of his mouth twitched. Yet you'll figure it out. Their conversation flowed easily through dinner, discussing current projects, industry trends, and music theory with the comfortable rhythm they'd developed over the past months. James was more relaxed away from the studio, revealing glimpses of dry humor and surprisingly eclectic tastes. "I have a proposition," he said finally, after their plates were cleared. "Watershed Records is launching a boutique label focused on innovative composers. They've approached me about producing their inaugural EP series, 6 artists. Complete creative control, substantial promotion." Olivia nodded. Watershed was an influential independent label known for developing groundbreaking talent. "I'd like you to be one of the featured artists," he continued. 5 original compositions. Your work, your vision, my production. The offer hung between them, breathtaking in its implications. This wasn't session work or contributing to someone else's vision. This was her music, her opportunity to establish her own artistic identity with the backing of a respected label and the industry's most sought-after producer. "Why me?" she asked, the question that had lingered since their first encounter. James considered her thoughtfully. "Because your music has something increasingly written. You don't compose to follow trends or please algorithms. You write what needs to be written." Before she could respond, a flash went off nearby. A young woman with a professional camera quickly disappeared toward the restaurant's entrance. James's expression darkened. "Apparently, we've been noticed. Is that a problem?" Olivia asked. "It shouldn't be," he replied, but something in his tone suggested otherwise. The photographer's intrusion cast a shadow over the remainder of their evening. James became distracted, checking his phone frequently. When they parted, his customary intensity had returned. The brief window of relaxation firmly closed. 3 days later, Olivia understood why. A music industry blog published a feature titled, "Harrison's New Muse from Shopgirl to Studio Darling." The article detailed her meteoric rise under James's personal mentorship strongly, implying their relationship extended beyond professional boundaries. The restaurant photo featured prominently, carefully angled to suggest intimacy. Worse were the comments section and social media reactions. Typically another pretty face fast-tracked while real musicians struggle. "Wonder what audition she really passed with Harrison... How convenient that she accidentally damaged his guitar. Oldest trick in the book." Olivia felt physically ill reading the insinuations. She'd worked relentlessly to earn every opportunity, spending countless hours perfecting her technique and compositions. To have her legitimacy questioned so crudely was devastating. Her phone rang. "James, have you seen it?" she asked without preamble.
"Yeah."
His voice was controlled, professional. "Unfortunately, this sort of thing comes with visibility in the industry. I suggest ignoring it." "Easy for you to say," she responded, frustration bleeding through. "Your reputation isn't being questioned. They're calling me your conquest, not a musician." A weighted silence followed. "Would you prefer I withdraw the Watershed offer?" "What? Then focus on the work," he said firmly. "Gossip is ephemeral. Music endures." The conversation left her unsettled. His pragmatic response felt disconnected from the personal attack she was experiencing. Later that day, a delivery arrived at her apartment, a vintage effects pedal. She'd admired in the studio with a brief note for the Watershed sessions. "Trust your instincts." The gesture, while thoughtful, highlighted the gulf between their positions. James operated from established success, while she remained vulnerable to public scrutiny. The following week brought another complication. During a session at Harrison Studios, Olivia encountered Veronica Winters, a renowned vocalist with whom James had both a professional history and, according to industry rumors, a past relationship. "So you're the new project," Veronica remarked during a break, her tone casually dismissive. James always did have a thing for nurturing raw talent. The emphasis on nurturing carried unmistakable subtext. "I'm a guitarist working on multiple projects," Olivia replied evenly, "one of which happens to involve James." Veronica's perfectly arched eyebrow conveyed elegant skepticism. "A word of advice. He's brilliant but temporary. Once he's extracted what inspires him from your sound, he'll move on to the next muse. It's his pattern." Before Olivia could respond, James entered, his gaze moving between the two women with sudden wariness. "Problem?" he asked. "Just getting acquainted," Veronica replied smoothly, sharing war stories from the trenches of collaboration. The session resumed with palpable tension. Later, when they were alone, James fixed Olivia with a penetrating look. "Whatever Veronica said, is it true?" Olivia interrupted. "Do you have a history of discovering talent and then abandoning them once you've gotten what you need?" His expression hardened. "My professional relationships evolve based on mutual creative benefit. Sometimes that means intense collaboration for a specific project. Sometimes it means ongoing work. That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm offering." His tone made clear the subject was closed. Watershed sessions began the following month in an atmosphere of strained professionalism. James was exacting in the studio, pushing Olivia to refine every phrase and texture of her compositions. Their once easy communication became technical and distant, yet the music that emerged was undeniably powerful. Her most authentic work elevated by his production expertise. During playback of a particularly emotional piece, Olivia caught James watching her with the expression that transcended professional assessment, a moment of genuine connection through the music they'd crafted together. The moment shattered when his assistant entered with news that increased the growing complications exponentially. "The label wants to fast-track release and promotion," she announced. "They're proposing a 6-city showcase tour with media interviews, featuring you as the face of the new imprint. They're calling it the Harrison Discovery." Olivia's stomach dropped. Discovery. Like I'm some artifact he excavated. "It's standard marketing," James said, though he looked equally displeased. "We can negotiate terms." "I don't want to be marketed as your protege," she insisted. "I want my music to stand on its own." "In an ideal world, it would," he responded, a rare edge of frustration in his voice. "But the industry packages narratives along with music. This is how it works." "Maybe that's the problem," she shot back. "Maybe the system you've thrived in is fundamentally flawed." His expression closed like a shutter. "Perhaps, but it's the system we're working within." That evening, Olivia received a call from Beatrice, now working at a major booking agency. "Have you seen the latest industry newsletter?" she asked without greeting. Double quotes. "No. Why?" "There's a blind item about a legendary producer whose latest infatuation with an unknown talent is raising eyebrows among serious musicians." Olivia closed her eyes, leaning against her kitchen counter for support. "It's getting worse. Is there any truth to it?" Beatrice asked carefully. "You and Harrison... No," Olivia exclaimed. Then more quietly, "No, it's professional. Completely professional." The silence that followed contained a question Olivia wasn't ready to answer, even to herself, whether completely professional accurately described the complex dynamic that had developed between them, or if something more elusive and dangerous lurked beneath their creative partnership. As January's rain lashed against her studio windows, Olivia faced the growing realization that her hard-won opportunity had become entangled with complications she never anticipated. Her music was taking flight while her reputation faced questioning, and at the center of the storm stood James Harris, collaborator and increasingly an enigma whose true intentions remained as mysterious as the day he'd forgiven a catastrophic accident and unexpectedly changed the course of her life. Diminuendo of doubt. February arrived with relentless rain and the release date for Olivia's EP looming just weeks away. The marketing campaign had begun despite her objections. Press materials, emphasizing the Harrison Discovery angle, complete with artistic black and white photos of them in the studio, her looking intense at the guitar while he hovered near the mixing board. The industry chatter intensified. Several musicians who had previously offered session work suddenly became unavailable. An influential producer canceled a meeting without explanation. The message was clear. She was being labeled as someone who had advanced through connections rather than talent. After a particularly frustrating day of final mixing, where they disagreed about the prominence of strings in her most vulnerable composition, Olivia confronted James in his office. "This isn't working," she said, pacing the room while he remained seated behind his desk. "The music is being overshadowed by whatever this narrative is that's forming around us." James watched her, his expression unreadable. "The industry always needs stories. Next month they'll move on to someone else." "That's not good enough," she insisted. "I've worked too hard to be reduced to Harrison's latest project, and you're allowing it to happen." Something flashed in his eyes, anger perhaps, or hurt. "What exactly are you suggesting I do?" "Distance yourself from the project. Let me promote the EP on my own merit. Stop this mentorship narrative." This silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken complications. "If that's what you want," he finally said, his voice carefully neutral, "I'll instruct PR to minimize my involvement in the promotion." "Thank you," she said, though the victory felt hollow. As she gathered her things to leave, he spoke again. "Olivia, the music industry can be brutal. I thought my involvement would open doors for you." "It did," she admitted, "but now those same doors are becoming cages." His expression softened momentarily. "For what it's worth, your work stands on its own. It always has." Outside, the rain had intensified to a downpour. Olivia stood under the building's awning, suddenly uncertain about her decision. The truth she couldn't fully acknowledge was that her resentment stemmed not just from the rumors, but from the realization that she'd come to care about James's opinion about James himself in ways that complicated their professional relationship. True to his word, James stepped back from public involvement with her EP. The press release was modified, interviews rescheduled to feature Olivia solo. He still attended the final mastering sessions but remained uncharacteristically quiet, offering technical suggestions through his assistant rather than directly. The EP release event at Watershed's Portland headquarters became a test of Olivia's newfound independence. Without James's imposing presence beside her, music journalists asked more substantive questions about her compositions and influences. Several remarked on the distinctive textures and emotional depth of her work, comparisons to Harrison's production style noticeably absent. As the evening wound down, Watershed's founder, Eleanor Reed, approached Olivia with a glass of champagne. "Impressive debut," she said. "The response has been extraordinary. Radio is already requesting the lead track." "Thank you for taking a chance on me," Olivia replied, the validation both exhilarating and bittersweet. Eleanor studied her thoughtfully. "I've known James for 20 years. He doesn't attach his name to projects lightly." Olivia tensed. "The music is mine." Of course it is, Eleanor agreed, but his belief in you is significant. James doesn't mentor, it's not in his nature. Whatever he saw in you, it's exceptional. She paused, then added, he declined to attend tonight. You said you needed space to establish your own presence. The information settled uncomfortably in Olivia's chest. She'd assumed he was simply busy with other projects. The following weeks passed in a blur of radio appearances and small venue performances supporting the EP. Reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Though several noted the Harrison influence in production values, Olivia threw herself into promoting her music, ignoring the hollow feeling that had taken residence inside her. One rainy Tuesday, she found herself near Harrison Studios after a radio interview. On impulse she stopped by, telling herself she merely wanted to share the positive press with him professionally. The receptionist informed her that James was in a meeting but would be finished shortly. She wanted to wait. Olivia settled into a familiar chair in the lobby, absently scrolling through emails on her phone. Olivia, she looked up to find not James, but Veronica Winters emerging from the main studio, elegant as ever in a tailored suit, working on a new project. Olivia asked politely. Veronica's smile held a hint of satisfaction. Always. James and I have a productive history. The implication hung in the air between them. How's your little EP performing? Veronica continued, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. Very well, actually, Olivia replied evenly. Strong streaming numbers and excellent critical response. Impressive for a debut, Veronica conceded, though James's production always elevates material. Before Olivia could respond, James himself appeared from the studio, stopping short at the sight of them together. Something complicated passed across his features: surprise, wariness, and perhaps regret. Olivia, he acknowledged with a nod. I didn't know you were coming by. It wasn't planned, she said, suddenly feeling foolish. I just wanted to update you on the EP performance. I've been following the numbers, he replied, professional but distant. Congratulations. An awkward silence descended, broken by Veronica touching James's arm. We should finalize those arrangements before dinner. Dinner? The casual familiarity in Veronica's tone made the implication clear. Whatever professional distance James had maintained with Olivia evidently didn't extend to all his collaborators. I should go, Olivia said, gathering her belongings. I have another interview. Outside, she leaned against the building, angry at herself for the jealousy she had no right to feel. James was free to work with or dine with whoever he chose. Their connection had been professional, nothing more. The fact that it felt like something more was her problem, not his. That evening, she declined an invitation to perform at an industry showcase, claiming illness. Instead, she sat in her apartment with her guitar, composing a new piece that poured out her complicated emotions: confusion, disappointment, and the sharp edge of yearning for something she couldn't name. Days later, a specialized music blog published a piece analyzing her EP, praising its technical sophistication and emotional authenticity. The article specifically noted that while Harrison's production was evident, the compositions revealed a unique voice that stands entirely on its own merit. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a link to the article with a simple message. He's right. I always said the same. JH. The brief communication reopened the wound she'd been trying to close. She didn't respond. March brought unexpected news. Olivia's EP had been nominated for an Independent Music Award for Best New Instrumental Artist. The ceremony was scheduled for the following weekend in small but respected industry, event that often spotlighted emerging talent before they achieved mainstream recognition. Beatrice insisted on accompanying her. This is huge, she declared, helping Olivia select a dress for the ceremony. Your first nomination. Olivia nodded, though her enthusiasm was tempered. Harrison Studios is nominated in the production category for the Westbrook album, so he'll be there, Beatrice concluded, watching her friend carefully. Is that a problem? No, Olivia said too quickly. Why would it be? The ceremony was held in a renovated theater in downtown Seattle, intimate but elegant. Olivia's category was scheduled early in the program. As she and Beatrice found their seats, she scanned the room automatically, both dreading and hoping to catch a glimpse of James. When her category was announced, the screen displayed brief clips of each nominee's work accompanied by photos. Her segment featured a candid studio shot, one she recognized from the early sessions with James, his figure partially visible in the background, watching her play with unguarded admiration. And the award goes to Olivia Jenkins for Convergence. The applause seemed distant as she made her way to the stage, accepting the small crystal trophy with hands that trembled slightly. At the microphone, she thanked Watershed Records, her fellow musicians, and her supporters. She hesitated, then added, and to those who challenge us to exceed our own expectations, thank you for seeing possibilities we sometimes can't see ourselves. As she returned to her seat, she finally spotted James in the audience, seated with the Harrison Studios team. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded room. He inclined his head slightly, acknowledgement, respect, perhaps even pride. But the moment passed quickly as the ceremony continued. But something shifted inside Olivia. The recognition wasn't just for her music, but for her journey, one that had begun with a catastrophic accident and led to this moment of validation that, at the reception following the awards, Olivia circulated among industry figures, accepting congratulations and discussing potential projects. She was engaged in conversation with a film composer when she felt a presence beside her. "Congratulations," James said simply. Up close, he looked tired, the lines around his eyes more pronounced than she remembered. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly aware of how much she'd missed their conversations. "For everything." The film composer excused himself, leaving them in a small pocket of privacy amid the bustling reception. "Your speech was gracious," James observed. "It was honest," she countered. "I wouldn't be here without your belief in my work." He shook his head slightly. "You would have found your way eventually. Talent always does. Maybe, but not this path." She hesitated, then asked the question that had lingered for months. "Why did you really help me, James?" After the accident with the guitar, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because in that moment of panic and horror, you weren't thinking about saving your job or avoiding consequences. You were devastated about the instrument itself, what it represented, its history, its voice." He paused. "It's rare to find someone who cares about music with that kind of purity." The simple truth of it struck her speechless before she could respond. The announcement came that the Harrison Studios team had won Best Production for the Westbrook album. James was pulled away to accept the award, their conversation left unfinished. Later, as Olivia and Beatrice prepared to leave, a studio assistant approached with an envelope. "From Mr. Harrison," she explained before disappearing into the crowd. Inside was a handwritten note. "The Stratocaster needs new strings. Studio 3, tomorrow, 2 p.m. if you're interested." Beatrice read the note over her shoulder. "What does that mean?" Olivia smiled, understanding the invitation in its true context. "It means a door is still open." Perfect cadence. Olivia arrived at Harrison Studios 15 minutes early. The significance of the invitation and her response to it weighing on her mind, the receptionist directed her to Studio 3, a smaller space she'd never worked in before. She found James already there, the repaired vintage Stratocaster on a stand between two chairs. He looked up when she entered, a brief smile softening his features. "You came," he said, echoing their exchange from months earlier. "I came," she confirmed, settling into the chair opposite him, "though I'm not sure why we're meeting about guitar strings." He acknowledged the pretense with a slight nod. "I thought we should talk about the past few months, about your success, about misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings," she repeated carefully. "Like the rumors about us, like my failure to address them properly," he corrected. "I assumed professional distance would protect your reputation. I was wrong." The admission surprised her. James Harrison rarely acknowledged mistakes. "I've been thinking about why the music industry creates these narratives," he continued, fingers absently tracing the edge of the guitar. "Why talent isn't allowed to simply exist on its own terms, especially for women," she prompted when he fell silent. "And I think we could do something about it." He reached for a tablet, bringing up a document. "I've been developing a concept for a music education foundation, something to support young artists from underrepresented backgrounds, provide resources, mentorship, recording opportunities." Olivia scanned the proposal, noting the comprehensive approach from technical training to industry navigation skills. "It's ambitious," she observed, "but what does this have to do with me?" "I'd like you to co-develop the program," he said simply. "Your perspective as someone who recently navigated the industry's obstacles would be invaluable, and your talent as a composer and musician speaks for itself." The offer was unexpected but intriguing. "You want me to help design the curriculum?" "More than that," he clarified. "I want us to create this foundation together, equal partners, your music education experience combined with my production background." The proposition hung between them, carrying implications beyond professional collaboration. "Why now?" she asked. James set aside the tablet, meeting her gaze directly. "Because watching you overcome the industry's attempts to reduce you to a footnote in someone else's story reminded me why I became a producer in the first place, to help authentic voices be heard." He paused, then added more quietly, "and because I've missed our conversations." The admission created an opening, a chance to address what had remained unspoken between them. "Veronica implied there was a pattern," Olivia said carefully, "that you regularly discover talent and then move on." James sighed, rubbing his temple. "Veronica and I have a complicated history that colors her perspective. But yes, I've worked intensively with many artists. Some relationships continued, others ended when projects concluded." He looked at her steadily. "What was different with you was that I found myself caring about your career beyond what it meant for my production work." "And Veronica now?" she couldn't help asking. "Is recording vocals for a film score," he replied simply. "Nothing more." The clarification shouldn't have mattered, yet Olivia felt something tight inside her chest release. "The foundation," she said, returning to safer ground. "It's a worthwhile concept, but wouldn't my involvement create the same rumors we've been trying to dispel?" "Possibly," he acknowledged, "but I'm tired of making decisions based on how they might be misinterpreted. The work matters. The music matters." His expression grew more serious. "You matter, Olivia, as a musician, as a composer, as yourself." The words hung between them, honest and unguarded in a way she hadn't witnessed from him before. "I'll consider it," she said finally, though her mind was already racing with possibilities for the foundation's structure. James nodded, respecting her need for space to decide. He reached for the Stratocaster, handing it to her. "It really does need new strings," he said, lightening the moment, "and no one plays it better than you do." Over the following weeks, Olivia divided her time between performing in support of her EP and developing the framework for what they began calling Resonance Foundation. Working with James in this new capacity as a partner, rather than a mentee, transformed their dynamic. He valued her input, incorporated her suggestions, and occasionally deferred to her judgment on program elements. By summer, they had secured initial funding, established a board of directors representing diverse musical traditions, and identified a historic building for conversion into the foundation's headquarters and teaching space. As word spread about the initiative, respected musicians volunteered as instructors and mentors. Their professional partnership gradually evolved into something more personal. Late-night planning sessions led to dinner conversations that extended beyond music into literature, philosophy, and their respective journeys. The careful distance James had maintained began to dissolve as he shared stories from his early career, the struggles, the compromises, and the moments of transcendent creativity that had shaped his approach to production. On the evening before the Foundation's official announcement press conference, they worked late finalizing details. When they finally stepped outside, Portland's summer twilight bathed the city in golden light. "Walk," James suggested, nodding toward the riverfront path. They strolled in comfortable silence until reaching a viewpoint overlooking the water. The setting sun transformed the ripples into ribbons of copper and gold. "I've been offered a project in London," Olivia said, breaking the quiet. 3 months scoring an independent film. "The director heard my EP and specifically requested me." James turned to her, genuine pleasure in his expression. "That's significant recognition. Congratulations." "I'm considering declining," she admitted. "The Foundation launch will proceed exactly as planned," he interrupted gently. "This opportunity is precisely what Resonance aims to create for young musicians. You should take it." She studied his face, searching for any hidden reluctance. "You're sure about the Foundation continuing in your absence?" "Absolutely." His gaze held hers. "About wanting you to go?" "Not remotely, but that stoned ... double quotes." He hesitated. "Personal rather than professional," she suggested. "Yes." The admission hung between them, honest and unguarded. Olivia took a deep breath. "What if I said I'd go on one condition?" His eyebrow raised slightly. "Which is that you visit during production, to hear what I'm creating, to," she searched for the right words, "continue our conversation." Understanding dawned in his expression, the recognition that they were finally acknowledging the connection that had been building between them, one that transcended professional collaboration or mentorship. "I think that could be arranged," he replied, the warmth in his voice conveying much more than the simple words. The press conference the following day drew significant industry attention. As Olivia and James outlined Resonance Foundation's mission to nurture authentic musical voices from diverse backgrounds, a reporter raised the inevitable question. "Mr. Harrison, many in the industry speculate that your interest in this foundation and your partnership with Ms. Jenkins extends beyond professional boundaries. Would you care to comment?" The room tensed at the brazen question. Olivia felt a familiar flush of frustration at the reduction of their work to gossip. Before she could respond, James stepped forward. "What exists between any two people who create together is complex and multidimensional," he said, his voice measured but firm. "Ms. Jenkins and I began as accidental acquaintances, became colleagues, then collaborators, and now partners in this foundation." He surveyed the room with calm authority. "But the narrative that matters isn't about personal relationships. It's about creating spaces where talent can develop without being diminished by reductive assumptions or industry politics. It's about recognizing that authentic music and the people who create it deserve to be valued on their own terms." His gaze found Olivia's briefly before he continued. "The question isn't whether we care about each other. Of course we do, deeply. The question is whether that should be more interesting than the work we're doing and the opportunities we're creating for the next generation of musicians." The room fell silent, his words settling into a moment of rare industry introspection. Later, as they left the conference, Olivia squeezed his hand briefly. "That wasn't the safe answer." "No," he agreed with a slight smile, "but it was the honest one." 6 months later, Resonance Foundation welcomed its first cohort of young musicians. The renovated building hummed with creative energy as students worked in well-equipped studios under the guidance of experienced mentors. Olivia recently returned from her successful London project, lead composition workshops while James oversaw production training. In the main performance space, a display case held the repaired vintage Stratocaster, a symbol of the unexpected beginnings that had led to this moment. Beside it, a simple plaque read, "Sometimes our greatest opportunities emerge from our most difficult mistakes." As evening fell and the students departed, Olivia found James in Studio 3, listening to recordings from the day's sessions. He looked up when she entered, his expression warming in a way reserved only for her. "What do you think?" she asked, settling beside him. "First day of many. I think," he said thoughtfully, "that accidents sometimes lead us exactly where we need to be." She smiled, remembering the catastrophic moment that had started their journey: a dropped guitar, a ruined finish, and the unexpected kindness that had changed everything. "It's just an instrument," she echoed his words from that first day. "Just wood and wire." "And yet," he replied, taking her hand in the right hands, "capable of creating something beautiful." Outside, Portland's persistent rain tapped gently against the windows, a steady rhythm accompanying the melody they continued to compose together, one of mutual respect, creative passion, and the rare harmony that emerges when two people recognize in each other not just what they are, but what they might become.